Funny how one choice on a regular OL day can steer your whole life down a brand new road. I wasn't looking for change, just trying to make it to school on time. But life, well, it had other plans. I was running late. Again. My boy, Tyler, he's 9, was probably sitting outside the school office by now, kicking his feet and wondering if I forgot him. I could already see that little disappointed face of his as I hit the gas. My car, this clunky old Chevy I've had since forever, was cuffing and jerking like it needed to be put outta its misery. Money was tight, hours at the warehouse had been slashed, and every day felt like trying to dig yourself out of quicksand. That's when I saw her. Black SUV, top of the line kinda ride, sitting on the shoulder with its hazards blinking like it was crying for help. And there she was, some fancy-looking woman, probably mid-30s, passing next to it like she had somewhere real important to be. Beige coat, shiny high heels, the whole corporate power lady vibe. She looked like someone who'd step over a guy like me without a second thought. I glanced at the time. If I stopped, I'd definitely be even later to pick up Tyler. But something in me wouldn't let me keep driving. So I pulled over and hopped out into the chilly fall air. "You all right? Need a hand?" I asked, trying to keep things friendly. She turned, kinda startled, sized me up. Roadside said they were coming, but it's been forever. You know how to change a tire? Her voice was sharp, like she didn't expect much. I swallowed my pride and gave a nod. "Yeah, I got it." I grabbed the old wrench from my trunk and got to work. The lug nuts were stuck good, but I'd done this a dozen times. Could feel her eyes on me the whole time. She didn't belong out here. Looked more like she should be in some shiny boardroom than on the side of a dusty road. After a minute, she said, "Thanks. Not many people stop these days." "Yeah, well," I muttered while wrangling the last nut loose. "Life's hard enough already. Gotta help each other when we can." She went quiet after that, but I could feel a shift in the air. When I looked up, she was watching me with a look I couldn't quite place. Curious, maybe even thankful. Tire was swapped out in no time. I wiped my hands on my jeans and stood. "All right, you're all set," I told her. She hesitated a second, then stuck out her hand. Nails painted, soft skin, probably never had grease under those fingernails. "Thanks."
I'm Rachel.
I shook it, my rough hand dwarfing hers. "Derek." "Well, Derek," she said with a tight smile, "I owe you one." "Nah," I said, tossing the wrench back in the trunk. "Just doing what's right." I was walking back to my car when I noticed her still standing there, like she was thinking about something. Then she pulled out her phone and took a picture of my license plate. I raised an eyebrow but didn't say nothing. Folks are strange sometimes, and I had more urgent stuff on my mind, like getting to my kid before he figured I'd bailed on him. Next couple days rolled by without much fuss. Work was the same old grind, and my evenings were filled with reheated spaghetti and helping Tyler with fractions he hated more than broccoli. Then came the call. Random number popped up on my phone. I almost didn't answer.
Derek.
"This is Rachel. You helped me out with my car the other day. Remember?" I blinked, caught off guard. Yeah. Everything okay?" "More than okay," she said, her voice way more cheerful this time. "I wanted to thank you properly. Are you free for lunch tomorrow?" "Lunch? With her?" I almost laughed. "You really don't have to. Wasn't a big deal." "I insist," she said, not missing a beat. "Please." She had that kind of voice that didn't leave room for arguing. So I caved. Next thing I knew, I was sitting at some fancy downtown bistro I never even knew existed. My thrift store button-down felt like a joke next to all the sharp suits and high heels around me. I was definitely the odd one out. Then she walked in. Rachel glided over like she owned the place. Perfect hair, confident smile, like something out of a magazine. She sat down and said, "Derek," like we were old friends. "Appreciate you meeting me," she said as we sat down at that fancy table. I nodded, feeling a bit like I'd wandered into the wrong movie set. "Yeah, sure. But I gotta admit, I don't really get what this is about." For a split second, her smile dipped, but she pulled it back together fast. "I don't take acts of kindness lightly," she said, folding her hands on the table. "You stopped to help me without a skin for anything. That's rare." We ordered food. Well, she ordered. I didn't even recognize half the stuff on that menu. I just pointed at something with chicken in it and hoped for the best. She kept the conversation light at first. Asked about my job, my boy, and just life in general. I kept it short and simple. Didn't know why she cared, and I wasn't sure I was comfortable letting her in. Then, out of nowhere, she said, "You mentioned things were tight financially." Her voice softened. "If you don't mind me asking, what's been the hardest part?" That stopped me cold. People don't ask stuff like that. Especially not folks who drive cars worth more than my house. But I figured, what the hell? Be real. It's just everything. School stuff for Tyler, groceries, making sure he doesn't go without. Feels like I'm running a race I ain't ever gonna win. She nodded like she understood. Looked me dead in the eye. "You remind me of someone I used to know. Someone who kept giving, even when they had nothing left." Her voice cracked a little there. Just a flicker before she pushed it back down. I was about to ask more, but the waiter showed up with the food, and the moment passed. The rest of lunch was lighter, but I still didn't get what this was all about. Felt like there was more she wasn't saying. Then, as we said goodbye, she handed me a crisp envelope. "Open it when you get home," she said with a small, unreadable smile. "It'll explain things." I didn't think much of it on the ride home. Figured it was a thank you card or maybe a gift certificate to that overpriced place. But when I opened it, my jaw nearly hit the floor. Inside was a letter, typed up on some thick, expensive paper. It said Rachel owned a major company, multi-million-dollar big, and she was starting up a new project. One that needed someone with integrity and grit. She thought I was that someone. She wanted me to run it. Attached to the letter was a check for $5,000. Just in advance. At first I thought it was a scam. Some elaborate trick. But the check was real. The paper was real. Her signature was real. And the relief I felt, that was real too. That night I showed the letter to Tyler. "What do you think, buddy?" His eyes lit up. "Does this mean we won't have to eat canned soup anymore?" I chuckled, even though my throat was tight. "Maybe. But let's not get ahead of ourselves." Still, something about it all didn't sit right. Why me? Why would someone like her pick someone like me? The next morning, I called her and said I'd take the job. She sounded honestly excited. Told me to meet her at her office downtown. Let me tell you, her building looked like the future. Glass, steel, and money. I felt like a stray dog walking into a jewelry store. Rachel greeted me with that same composed smile and introduced me to her assistant, Lauren. Sharp eyes, no-nonsense type. They laid out the project. Some kind of charity effort meant to help families who were struggling. Like me. My job was to run it. Day-to-day stuff. Keep things clean. Make sure the funds went where they were supposed to. Sounded simple enough. But the deeper I got into it, the more I realized it was a lot. Meetings all the time. Deadlines that hit you like a freight train. The pressure of being the guy in charge. Especially when I'd never even worn a tie to work before. Rachel was always there. Supportive. But I could feel it. She was watching me. Testing me. Then everything went sideways. One morning I got a call. Money, a lot of it, had gone missing from the charity's main account. And all the signs pointed straight at me. My name. My login. My access. I was floored. I double-checked every penny that came through those books. I knew I didn't mess this up. Rachel called me into her office. Her face gave nothing away. "Derek," she said, "I need to hear it from you. Did you take the money?" I looked her square in the eye.
No.
I swear. I don't know how this happened, but it wasn't me. She didn't answer right away, just stared. Then finally she nodded. "I believe you, but we need to figure out who did this, and fast." So that's what we did. We started digging. And what we found, well, let's just say it was only the beginning. The deeper we dug, the messier things got. It wasn't just sloppy bookkeeping or a one-time mistake. No. Somebody had gone to real lengths to mess with the charity. To sabotage me. And Rachel? She was hanging onto trust like it was a rope keeping us from going under. We spent long nights poring over spreadsheets and bank statements, side by side under the dim light of her office. She was sharp, focused, but I could see the toll it was taking. This charity wasn't just some business move. It was her heart. Then finally we found it. A string of quiet transactions. Small amounts, sent out like clockwork. Tucked away in the operational costs. They'd been routed to an offshore account. Hidden in plain sight. "Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing," Rachel muttered. eyes locked on the screen. They're trying to bring it all down from the inside. Her voice was calm, but her shoulders were tight. This wasn't just about stolen money. It was an attack on everything she'd built. Don't worry, I told her. They didn't count on us fighting back. Truth is, I was scared. Not just for my job, but for what I might find. Felt personal now. I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. Like someone out there was waiting for me to trip up. Then came a twist I didn't see coming. Lauren, Rachel's assistant, came to see me one night after most folks had gone home. She stepped into my office, shut the door behind her real slow. "Derek," she said, her tone softer than usual. "I've been looking through some old records. You need to see this." She handed me a folder. Her fingers brushed mine for a second too long. Then she looked me square in the eye. "Be careful who you trust." That hit me like a gut punch. Lauren was always sharp and distant, all business. But now, she looked spooked. I opened the folder, and inside were documents. Detailed, dated, and damning. They linked that offshore account directly to one of Rachel's top execs. A guy named Grant Miller. Finance director. Slick talker. Always had a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. The next morning, I brought the file to Rachel. She didn't say much as she flipped through it, but her face went hard. "Grant," she whispered, like she was saying goodbye to an old friend. "He's been with me since the beginning. I trusted him." I could see it hit her deep, but she didn't hesitate. "We need proof," she said. "The kind that'll stick. If we accuse him now, he'll just bury the trail." So we set a trap. Rachel, Lauren, and I put together a fake transaction just big enough to tempt him. If Grant took the bait, we'd know for sure. He did. Within days, he was caught red-handed, accessing the account, trying to move more funds. When Rachel confronted him, his whole act cracked wide open. "You think you're so righteous," he snapped. "But you're no better than me. You built all this on the backs of guys like him." He pointed at me, spit the words like poison. "Stray dogs you think you can rescue?" Rachel didn't flinch, but I saw it hurt. You'd think that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Digging through Grant's files led us to a whole mess of other problems. That offshore account? It wasn't just a stash for him. It was connected to a wider network of shady deals, some of which traced back to Rachel's own company. "This goes deeper than I ever imagined," she said one night, slumped in her chair as the rain beat down outside. She looked different then. Tired. Human. "I should have seen this. I've been blind." I realized then, Rachel wasn't just fighting to save the charity. She was trying to save herself. Everything she'd built was crumbling, and she needed to make it right. But as we pushed forward, things got darker. First, it was anonymous notes slid under my door. Then somebody keyed my car. Then Tyler's school called. They'd seen a man loitering near the playground. That was it for Rachel. "You need to walk away," she said, her voice tight with fear. "This is getting dangerous. I won't let anything happen to you. Or your son." But I shook my head. Couldn't run. I couldn't let the people who framed me win. And more than that, I wanted my son to see his dad stand tall, even when the world was trying to knock him down. "I'm not quitting," I told Rachel, firm as I could manage. "We're in this together, no matter how ugly it gets." Tension was already sky-high when someone stepped forward who we hadn't expected. Lauren. She'd been helping us behind the scenes, quiet and efficient. But now she had her own reasons to join the fight. Turns out, her younger sister had been one of the people Grant's operation had chewed up and spit out. Promised help, handed lies, left broke and broken. From that moment on, it wasn't just me and Rachel. The three of us stood together, ready to take the whole rotten system down. We weren't just going to tell the cops, we were going to tell everyone. Expose every name, every dirty deal, every shell company. If we didn't, these people would just vanish back into the dark and do it all over again. That next week, a blur. Late nights, early mornings. Walls covered in printouts. Coffee-fueled strategy sessions where sleep was a luxury none of us could afford. With every lead we followed, more knots came undone. More lies. More names. And the scariest part? Grant wasn't acting alone. He was just one piece of a much bigger, nastier puzzle. A group built on greed, fraud, and screwing over anyone who got in their way. The more we uncovered, the more dangerous it got. One night, After another long shift, I headed to my car and spotted a black sedan across the street. Engine on. Lights off. Driver sittin' still as a statue. Eyes locked on me. I kept walking, acting like I didn't notice. But when I turned the corner and that car started to slowly roll forward, my heart kicked into overdrive. This wasn't paranoia. I was being followed. When I got home, Tyler was passed out on the couch with a half-eaten sandwich still on the plate beside him. I smiled, brushed the hair off his forehead, trying to hold on to that peaceful moment. But then I saw it. An envelope slid under the front door. Inside, just one sheet of paper. Big, bold black letters. Stop or else. It wasn't just a threat. It was a line in the sand. Somebody wanted me gone, and they didn't care how they made that happen. My hands were shaken when I called Rachel. "They're getting nervous," she said, her voice tight but focused. "That means we're close." And she was right. But now it wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about protecting my boy, protecting Rachel, protecting truth. The next morning, Lauren came in like a woman on a mission. She'd cracked a string of encrypted emails that laid everything bare. It wasn't just about skimming money off the top. They were running millions through fake companies, using Rachel's name, her reputation, as a shield for criminal deals. Lauren dropped the files on the desk and said, voice trembling with a mix of anger and pride, "This is it. We've got M." But the truth don't always speak loud enough on its own. These folks had power. Friends in high places. People who could bury the story, scrub the evidence, and make sure the world never knew what really happened. "We've got to take this public," Rachel said, her voice steady but heavy. "If we go to the authorities first, they'll shut it down before it sees daylight. But if the people know..." There was no half measure now. We were all in. Rachel called a press conference. The big kind, reporters, cameras, lights in her face. I stood off to the side, heart pounding as she stepped up to the mic. She didn't sugarcoat a damn thing. "I started this charity to help people," she said. Her voice cracked for just a second. "But I failed to see what was festering inside. And now, I'm taking responsibility. Not just for the mistakes, but for fixing them." She owned it. All of it. And the reaction was instant. News outlets lit up. Social media exploded. People were angry. The story spread like wildfire. And just when we thought we might finally be turning the corner, the next day, Rachel's office was broken into. The place was wrecked. Computers smashed. Files gone. Security footage wiped clean. This wasn't random. It was a message. We'd rattled the cage. And the beast inside wasn't happy. Whoever we were up against wasn't gonna back down easy. That break-in, the wreckage, they weren't just angry. They were scared. "They're nervous," I told Rachel the next morning. "They wouldn't be pulling this crap if they thought they had the upper hand." Still, the pressure was starting to show. Rachel, usually calm and focused, had gotten quiet. Like the weight of it all was pushing her down. Lauren? She was jumpy, always glancing over her shoulder like ghosts were following her. And me? I couldn't stop worrying about Tyler. He was starting to notice the tension. No matter how hard I tried to fake a smile, he was too smart for his own good. Then we caught our break. Lauren, digging deeper than anyone thought possible, found a hidden server. Buried deep in the system, like someone really didn't want it found. And on it, a gold mine. Detailed logs, paper trails, shady deals, everything. Fraud, bribery, extortion. All of it laid out plain as day. Grant and his whole crooked circle were right there in black and white. "This is it," Rachel said, eyes lit with fire. "This is what we've been fighting for." But before we could celebrate, an email landed in her inbox. Attached was a video. I watched in frozen silence as the screen showed my son, Tyler, walking home from school, his backpack bouncing with every step. Then came the voice. Flat, robotic, cold. "We warned you." My blood ran ice cold. I grabbed my phone and called the school in a panic. When they told me he'd already left, my heart sank into my stomach. I bolted, keys in hand, engine roaring. I was gone before they even finished talking. Called Rachel on the way. "No more games," I said. "We end this. Now." Back at her office, Rachel and Lauren kicked into gear. They blasted the files to every news station, every agency, every contact they had. The goal was simple: make sure no one could bury this. Not now. Not ever. Meanwhile, I scoured the neighborhood like a madman, mind filled with the worst thoughts I've ever had. Then I saw him. Tyler was at the park, sitting on a swing, looking small and scared. I ran to him and hugged him so tight I thought my heart might break right there. He was safe, but shaken. That was it for me. We couldn't stay. I had to protect my boy. Rachel made arrangements. Said she had a friend with a place outside the city, quiet, off the grid. A safe house. So we packed fast. Whatever we could carry. Drove through the night till we reached this little cabin out past the woods. No neighbors. No lights. Just trees and silence. This is temporary, Rachel said, helping me unpack. Until we know it's over. The authorities are moving. They're digging in. Tyler stuck to my side like glue. He wasn't asking questions, but I could see it in his eyes. He knew something was wrong. I ruffled his hair, trying to smile. Adventure time, bud. I told him. Just you, me, and a bunch of nosy squirrels. He grinned a little, but the fear was still there. It was in me, too. That night, after he was asleep, Rachel and I sat at the kitchen table, going over updates from Lauren. She'd sent word the leak had worked. Investigations were underway. Headlines were flying. Arrests were coming. But just when I thought maybe we were getting close to the end, I heard something. Outside. In the trees. I held up a hand to Rachel. Quiet. Still. Reached for the closest thing I could grab. A heavy old fireplace poker. My heart was pounding as I edged toward the window. Peered through the glass. Movement. Just beyond the trees. Whoever it was didn't come closer. Didn't knock. Just stood there, a shadow in the dark. They wanted us to know. They knew where we were. Next morning, I stepped out to get some air and found a note under the windshield wiper of Rachel's car. For words. Big, jagged, angry. You can't run forever. None of us said much that day. Rachel looked exhausted. Her confidence, her strength was starting to crack under the weight of everything. I should have known, she whispered later that night, tears rolling down her cheeks. I trusted the wrong people. I put you and Tyler in danger. This is my fault. I looked her right in the eye.
No.
It's their fault. You tried to help people. They're the ones who twisted it. This ain't on you, I told Rachel, my voice low but steady. The people behind this? They're the ones who need to pay. Even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it myself. It felt like we were pushing a boulder uphill, and every inch we gained came with another setback. Just when we'd catch our breath, another hit would come. Then Lauren called with something wild. She'd made contact with an insider, someone who claimed to have key info on the folks running the whole show from the shadows. It was a risk, a big one, but it might be our only shot at ending this for good. I'll go, I said without hesitating. No way, Rachel snapped. It's too dangerous. Could be a setup. I can't just sit here while they tear everything down, I told her. We need answers. Now. After some heavy back and forth, she finally agreed, but she was coming with me. We arranged to meet the guy in a crowded cafe, playing it safe. But even surrounded by people, the air felt tense. The informant's name was Terry. Mid-40s, twitchy, eyes always dartin'. Said he used to do books for one of the shell companies. He slid a flash drive across the table like it was nuclear material. They know you're getting close, he said, barely above a whisper. And they're scared. Scared people are dangerous. That drive? It was the final puzzle piece. Inside were files, thousands of them, laying out the whole twisted hierarchy. Every name, every bank account, every dirty deal. Back at the safe house, we found Tyler working on a puzzle Rachel had brought him. He looked up and smiled, proud of his progress. And just like that, it hit me again what all this was really about. Not just revenge or justice. It was about protecting him. His innocence. His future. Rachel and Lauren spent days sorting through the files, building out a full report. We sent it everywhere, news outlets, state and federal agencies, whistleblower hotlines. And this time, people listened. Headlines exploded. The network's crimes were plastered across every screen. Arrests started rolling in fast. The walls were closing in on the last holdouts. But it didn't feel like victory. Not yet. They weren't going down without a fight. One night, while Tyler was asleep, the safe house came under attack. It happened fast. Windows shattered. Masked men burst in, armed, angry, and ready to finish what they'd started. I grabbed the fireplace poker again, same one I'd used before, and did everything I could to keep them back. Rachel fought too. We held the line. Then, like a miracle, sirens. Lauren had called the cops just in time. The attackers were arrested. But the damage? It was deep. Tyler was shaken to the core. Rachel looked like she'd aged a decade in an hour. "This ends now," I growled, barely able to keep my hands from shaking. "No more running. No more hiding. We finished this." The final sting operation was dangerous, but we worked side by side with the law. Lined up every name, every address, every account. Then we hit M. It was a raid to remember. The ringleaders, every last one, taken down in dramatic fashion. Years of corruption collapsed in a single night, like watching a rotten house finally fall. When it was over, Rachel's name was cleared. The charity, reborn. Tyler started smiling again, sleeping through the night, asking about baseball instead of bad guys. And me? For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was just surviving. I felt like I mattered. Months later, I stood next to Rachel and Tyler at a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the newly rebuilt charity. Fresh paint, clean walls, a new beginning. Rachel looked at me, eyes soft. "You saved us," she said. "Not just the charity. Me." I shook my head. "No," I said, looking around at all we'd come through. "We saved each other." The crowd clapped as the ribbon fell. Tyler beamed at me like I was his hero. And for once, I felt like one. We'd walked through hell, faced the darkest parts of people, of ourselves. But we came out the other side, together. And this was just the beginning.